Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul. Hopefully you're having an amazing day. The RTX 40 series, aka Lovelace, is going to launch next year. And this next generation series of GPUs is said to have a humongous increase over the RTX 30 series. Yet more performance targets have leaked for this upcoming GPU, so let's get right into it, right after this video's sponsor. If you're running a copy of Windows 10 which isn't activated, of course, not only do you have to worry about the missing customization options, but there's also that annoying Windows desktop watermark reminding you to activate. Today's video is sponsored by whokeys.com, and they have an excellent price on Windows 10 Professional as well as home keys. Yeah, and they also of course sell games. I've bought a few Windows 10 keys with my own personal account to test everything was legit and worked in preparation for this sponsored video. You can pick up one of their keys for 25% off using the coupon code RGT in the checkout. There's links to their website in the video description. Also, if you're building a few systems, there's bundles available too. Again, you can check out whokeys.com and use the coupon code RGT for 25% off the listed Windows 10 key prices. So this information comes to us via Grayman, and actually it's really interesting because his information is now starting to match up closely with what I've been hearing. So he believes that the RTX 40 series, more specifically I'm guessing the RTX 4090, will have a performance target of over 2 times the RTX 3090. He thinks that 2 times is going to be rather conservative compared to what we're going to see Lovelace here. Now, personally, I've put out a couple of videos already that I've personally been hearing a performance target of around 2.2 times over the RTX 3090. So, of course, performance targets are always rather interesting to discuss because you can really talk about them in many different ways. You could say ray tracing performance, for example, which is a fine metric to discuss, or you could talk about them T-flops, or simply the number of frames in a game. So a very simple example, if you have 60 frames per second with a specific card at 4K and it goes to 120, of course you're roughly doubling the performance. And there are many other ways to discuss performance, and it gets even trickier too with, of course, some graphics cards simply doing better in some game engines. However, in general, I've been hearing well over 2 times performance targets for both RDNA 3 and also, of course, Nvidia's Lovelace. Now, it's quite interesting because with Lovelace, it's going to essentially be a monolithic die, which is obviously a rather different strategy to what AMD are employing with RDNA 3, which is of course going to be MCM. However, eventually Nvidia will move to Hopper, which, well, as you probably know by now, is going to be chiplet based. And yeah, Lovelace, from all I'm hearing, and also Grayman's mentioned this multiple times as well, the TDP of these cards is astronomical. However, it's not like RDNA 3 is probably going to be sipping power either. So the good news is we're going to see a huge increase in performance. The bad news is it's going to come at the cost of, well, power. So pro tip for you, you might not want to hook this thing up to a gigabyte power supply. Interesting results could occur, I'm just saying. But yeah, I'm really interested to see what the next generation of cards is going to bring to the table. And now we're going to actually move over to another set of performance targets, this time from Intel, specifically their Alchemist series of GPUs, previously known as DG2. So there's a slide now that has emerged online, and a couple of websites have now started to pick this up. So of course, when any slide leaks, there's the question of, is it actually real? Because let's face it, there have been a ton of slides in the past which have been leaked online, and honestly, someone's created a fake one. In fact, there's something quite interesting about this specific lineup, because if you look at the Radeon cards, for example, the 6800 XT, it doesn't have RX in front of it. However, that's not necessarily really indicative of it being fake or not. It's just, well, it's just extra characters, and everyone knows, of course, what they're talking about here. Now, what I find rather interesting is that Intel are referring to these as SOC 1, SOC 2. We'll get more into that in just a moment. But we also have TDP figures. So it's 175 to 225 watts. This is a figure I've been hearing bandied about quite frequently. Apparently, Grayman has also said that we could see a higher TDP model as well. But this apparently is not actually listed in this particular slide, but he's been hearing about it. Now, I don't know what the differences are because I'm assuming the 512 execution unit is the 225 watt model. So it's possible that some like ultra high-end premium desktop SKUs would have higher clock frequencies. And of course, this would quickly start to push TDP figures up, depending on how voltage curve and, frequency scale with the Intel architecture. It seems, based on what Intel have revealed in the architecture day anyway, that we're looking at a frequency of around 2 gigahertz, low 2 gigahertz for, I was about to say for DG2, but I guess for Alchemist. And of course, they have a very aggressive roadmap going forward anyway with future architectures. But anyway, getting back to the performance targets, which I'm sure you guys are mostly interested in. So yeah, in the top end, it's going to be basically competing against the 6700 XT and from Nvidia, the RTX 3070. And on the lower end, we're going to also be seeing, basically a 6600 XT and an RTX 3060. So that's quite a large, gap in the market. And obviously they can easily do that by simply binning and, the normal stuff. There's also mention of the 6500 from AMD, but of course this is not officially launched yet. But it's not too difficult for a company to predict the performance targets of a rival. Let's just be honest. Yeah, stuff happens in the industry. That's all I'm going to say about that. And SOC 1 and SOC 2 are terms that we've actually heard a couple of times, even from Intel themselves in reference to their GPUs. And of course, the lower end SKUs here is basically, going to be low number of execution units. And at this point, we've already seen tons of leaks as to the specification of the card, so I'm not going to tread over old ground here. But ultimately, I think Intel are going to have a really nice competitive GPU on their hands. The question is for me, ultimately, it's going to come down to a few things. 1, availability, an obvious one. 2, pricing, another obvious one. And 3, drivers and just overall features. Lisa Pierce from Intel's software team has basically said that it's going to be fully featured. So that means, like, for example, being able to record your gameplay, being able to overclock, whatever. But it's going to be very interesting to me things like optimization. For example, this pure example, but let's say you have an Unreal Engine game and then you go to like an id Engine game and then you go to something else. How's performance going to scale? So for example, let's say you have an RTX 3070 as like 100%. This is just a pure example, by the way. This is not like, things I've been hearing. It's just a question I've got. So for example, let's say you get 100% for the RTX 3070 in an id Engine game, an Unreal Engine game, and a couple of other engines, right? So let's just say 4 games, 4 different game engines, and you get 100% for the 3070. Well, we have, for example, with DG2, 100% for game engine 1, 102, 103%, and then, and another one, because it's not been so optimized, around 90. They're saying this is not the case. In fact, they are also going to do some tweaking with more legacy DX11 titles, for example. I'm cautiously optimistic, honestly. They are going to be a little bit late launching. However, my speculation is that they're going to quickly iterate on their launch. So they're probably going to release Alchemist. And this is again speculation, they're probably not going to wait that much longer until the next generation card launches, because otherwise they're going to be competing against like the 40 series of cards from Nvidia. So I suspect they might be a little bit late to the party, but they might be doing this purposefully to try and undercut the competition initially. It'll be very interesting to see how we actually see Intel compete here. I'm, as I said, cautiously optimistic, but yeah, ultimately, until I actually get one of these things, until I test it, yeah, I guess we'll just wait and see. Speaking of waiting and seeing, also just a small update, because a number of you actually messaged me about this, so thanks to everyone who did. Igor's Lab have actually done updated testing for the PlayStation 5. You might recall I covered this just a few days ago, but their testing was not exactly conclusive. They had not been, putting all of the temperature probes into the right places and that type of thing. So, it was looking good with the PlayStation 5 testing they did. It did seem that the new model was quite competitive in terms of temperatures versus the older model, and one of the benefits that they managed to have with their PlayStation 5s is that they essentially had very similar fans and all of that stuff, which is obviously a good thing. However, fast forward to now, they've done updated testing, and now they've compared their temperatures against Gamers Nexus. Now, The long and short of it is that their temperatures do seem very good. In fact, they actually seem slightly better than the launch model. Before everyone starts to celebrate, though, there are several things to be aware of. The first is that, different environmental factors can come into play. Different consoles can have different temperatures anyway, just with, silicon quality and all of that jazz. And also, the accuracy of the testing with this stuff is still quite tricky. I'm not saying the testing is flawed. I'm just saying that, just a couple of centimeters or even a quarter of a centimeter off could change the temperatures. But again, it is looking quite good for the new revision PlayStation 5. Just to be honest with you guys, I just briefly looked at this. So I would highly encourage, for you guys to do your own investigation. I'll link that article in the video description. But even so, it's quite interesting, to be honest with you. And yeah, I think that's just about it for this particular video. Hopefully you have enjoyed it. If you did, then, well, you know what to do because it's YouTube land. Leave a likey on the video and I will see you soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.